Inviting in.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's edition of the Founders First COVID-19 webinar series. We will get started in about 2 minutes to give everyone time to join as we buffer along here. We've got a very exciting panel with today's speakers, so we'll be starting at 10:03, so we'll give another couple minutes. Good morning, everyone. If you've just joined, welcome to the Founders First COVID-19 webinar series. We've got a very exciting topic today that's top of mind for so many folks. We will get started at 10:03, so please stay with us and stay tuned. All right, it is the point of time, 10:03. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's Founders First COVID-19 webinar series. I am your host today, Kim Folsom, founder of Founders First, and I'd like to welcome all of our attendees. Today's webinar is the topic that's on everyone's mind, new models for attracting, developing, and retaining diverse talent, specifically diverse STEM talent. And I'm joined by a great panel of speakers who I will introduce to you shortly. But before we get started, I want to share a few housekeeping rules. You're on mute, but we ask you to post questions in the chat session. And additionally, you'll get a chance to interact by also responding to a poll that we're going to do later on in the webinar. So let me get going here. Our agenda of what we're going to cover: first, we are going to do our introduction of our subject matter experts. Additionally, we're going to talk a bit about some of the recent announcements made by corporations to increase the workforce, but have had some continuous challenges doing that. We're going to have a discussion with our experts. Next, we're going to talk about some other resources. And then lastly, we're going to talk about some closing action and items you can take to leverage some of the expertise that's shared during the today's session. I want to briefly introduce you to our speakers today, and then in detail, we're going to have a chance to go through and hear their backgrounds and organizations in a bit more detail. But we're joined by, again, a fabulous panel of experts. We've got Liliana Mongo, who's the CEO of Sabio, and we've got Saul Paul, the founder of Be the Change Network, and then Chris Graham, President of Workforce Education Solutions at National University System. So a little bit about setting the table about our purpose at Founders First and what we do. Our mission is to help fund and grow diverse founders to help them become large, diverse, leading large, diverse workforces. And we work with companies as small as a couple person consulting firm to the medium-sized company, maybe a couple million in revenues, but they've got, a couple dozen team members, to much larger organizations that may be, 45, 50 team members. But our goal is to help them lead in several fronts. Personally, with regards to growing their own personal economics, helping them grow their workforce, grow and lead in communities, and also, as I shared, lead a large, diverse workforce. And so specifically today, we're going to talk about, there's some new models that are led by some diverse founders, as well as in corporate areas, as well as education, that are building allies to help lead the way with new solutions to help address the hiring, development, and retention gap as it relates to STEM talent. Everyone knows that in this innovation economy, there are millions of jobs specifically in the area of STEM that are still unfilled. And then when you look at the number of those jobs that are filled by diverse talent, most corporations, especially those in the Fortune 1000, the representation of diverse talent, be it women, folks of color, members of the LGBT community, military veterans, or in low and moderate income areas, there's very, very little representation, far less than 5%. And I'm excited about today's panel because they're going to share some insights and best practices about what we can do to address this. So first, we're going to start by allowing our panel to give you a little bit more insight about who they are, what they're doing, and what background they have to address these issues. So we're going to start with our first panelist, Saul Paul, who's a Grammy-nominated artist that has leveraged his own journey to build, to take a great stab with helping to attract and inspire the talent pipeline for our building diverse tech professionals, and starting as young as middle school students all the way to college age students. So please take it away, Saul Paul, and share with our audience about who you are, your organization, and what you've done to make an impact.
Thank you. I'm Saul Paul, musician with the message. I've leveraged my success as a artist, activist, and an entrepreneur, as a keynote speaker, speaking for tech companies and Fortune 500 companies, and started to realize that they shared with me their need of a diverse talent pool or diverse talent. Myself, I come from a single parent home, actually no parent. I was adopted. My grandmother raised me in poverty. I was able to transition and go from growing up in the ghetto to graduating from the prestigious University of Texas at Austin. And once I did that, once I transitioned, I started to realize that there were other young people just like me who had so much potential, but they didn't know there wasn't a pipeline, there wasn't a curriculum to take them from polish, from potential to polish. And so my organization, the Be the Change Network, which in partnership with the Saul Paul Foundation, we created a curriculum that starts with youth as young as middle school, primarily high school, and first generation college students, more so community college students, because what we've discovered is that these are young students, young people who just haven't had the opportunity and more so the training and the skills to be able to transition and become a tech employee. And when these companies want to add value and have a diverse workforce, we make it possible for these people to be able to access the opportunities. I'll speak on that more later, but that's the premise.
All right, thank you so much, and welcome, Saul Paul. Next, we're delighted to be joined by Liliana Mwango. She is the co-founder of Sabio. It's a coding boot camp, and she has leveraged her influence and expertise to help train specifically our next generation of software engineers. So Liliana, tell us about you and your background at your organization.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you so much for putting this on. You're a very brave individual, and I'm super happy to be by your side on this journey. Good morning, everyone. My name is Liliana Monge, and excited to be here today to tell you, our story. We began in the summer of 2013 in downtown Los Angeles. And we had two very clear missions. We wanted to make sure that we got the word out in Los Angeles, which is an exceptionally diverse community, that anyone in the city was able to pick up the skills that were necessary to become an exceptional and professional software engineer. We also made sure that we spoke to and that we made accommodations to make sure that women could participate in the program. Kim speaks about having influence, the influences that I had the privilege of finding a husband who's amazing. Gregorio Rojas is my co-founder, and he and I concocted a Sabio Coding Bootcamp in the summer of 2013. And I was the first ones to utter the words like, we should do this. So he likes to always remind me of that. But Gregorio is an awesome engineer, and together, bringing together our talents, we definitely were able to prove that you could take someone, a young adult, who maybe is working at a charter school just as a teacher's aide, and provide them with, some equipment, some very highly specialized technical training, and then support them through their job search. The first person who ever showed up to Sabio is Kevin, exceptional young man. He graduated from Morehouse, and now he works at Nike as a senior software engineer. So we're looking to do that now at large scale, and partnering with companies like Kim's Founders First and with National University to really scale that solution that we know works very well. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you and welcome. And next, I'm delighted to introduce you to Chris Graham, who is the President of Workforce Education Solutions at National University System. And National is partnering with a variety of organizations like Sabio because they have been a leader in actually educating diverse founders. And just as a, I guess a disclaimer, I have been, I'm fortunate in that my dad was one of the founding graduates of National University System almost 50 years ago. So I have been the beneficiary of seeing how they do engage in diverse talent and help connect them into and build the expertise, and they partner with organizations like you're seeing today. And so, sorry, Chris, to steal your thunder, but please introduce National University System to our audience, as well as your background and achievements and what you're doing to help address this issue.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kim, and I'm thrilled to be here. So National University System is a collection of nonprofit adult serving institutions of higher education. So we have National University, which is our flagship institution, North Central University, which has 19 doctoral programs, all 100% online. Then we have City University of Seattle up in downtown Seattle. And National University is right. So we're actually going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary. And we were founded out of a corporate partnership by the Learning and Development Director of General Dynamics. And his folks were deploying for the Vietnam War, and they were only going to be given 30 days notice before they had to ship out. And so they couldn't commit to the 13-week semester of San Diego State or the 10-week quarter of UC San Diego. So he created the one course a month model so his employees could go on and they could take one course at a time and still be ready to fulfill their military obligations. So as we've grown, we've had partnerships with school districts, law enforcement agencies, and many others, but really we're really known for that one course a month format. But there's a very specific reason why it was created. It was for those employees there. So my organization is Workforce Education Solutions, and we're the employee education and corporate partnership arm of the institution. So what we do is we work with companies to help to upskill their employees so they can move up within their own organizations and industries. So we work with organizations on training and development programs, on customized education, and on hiring partnerships.
All right, well, thank you so much, Chris, and welcome. So let's dig in and start our discussion about these models related to helping to address the gap in STEM talent, and specifically diverse STEM talent. And we have a series of questions that we're going to go through, but I want to share with you why this is so important to me. Some of you may know about my background as a serial entrepreneur and founder of Founders First, But actually, I began my career some 30 plus years ago as a software engineer. And I was like, you know, the check the box person in so many corporations. And there wasn't, you know, I checked the box as a woman. I checked the box as a diverse founder, software engineer at so many companies. And, you know, this was in the 80s, in the 90s where this happened. And we're still having this discussion. Here it is, you know, 20 some odd years later. But we didn't happen to have these great solutions by the folks that we have here. So this is super important. I had the benefit of having a dad who was an engineer to go through and do this. But as Saul Paul mentioned, that there is a desire to be able to help identify and aspire those opportunities for career education. So we're going to start our discussion with regards to, you know, what things can we do? What strategies do you do to identify and inspire youth to pursue STEM career options? And I'll pose that question to you, Saul Paul, starting there.
Thank you much. Well, I would like to set the stage and say why it's important. We share this everywhere we go. Basically, closing the diversity gap is critical to meeting future talent needs and incorporating new perspectives reflective of a global customer base. That's very, very key because when you're doing global business, when you have so many different types of customers, you want to have a workforce that reflects that. And you want to create these opportunities. And just like the world right now, right? Like so many like racial injustice has been highlighted. Systemic injustices have been highlighted. And because so many people have been blocked out, everyone is going above and beyond to be inclusive. DEI is no longer trendy, it's no longer just diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not something you say, but it's something that you actually do. And once you do it, once you own that, then you have to approach it different. You can't just start with adults. You can't just flip a switch and become diverse, flip a switch and become equitable, flip a switch and become inclusive. You have to start, you have to think long range. So it's 2020. What will your workforce look like in 2030, right? Okay, well, your workforce will be populated by high school students that graduate and become engineers and become, take on these other roles and whatnot. So that's why it's important to start as early as middle school and to start grooming these students. Cool, so that's why it's important. So how do you do it? Some strategies. You partner with professionals. The reason why people hire consultants is because you recognize that they have an expertise and they're a effective shortcut to accomplishing the goal. So when you want to start grooming these young people to become your future workforce, you partner with the professionals. You partner with the people that are working with young people all the time. Those that are culturally relevant, understand the language, and because regardless of how you say it, like I believe you say in English, you say kiss, in Spanish, you say beso. Okay, I said the same thing, just in a different language. It's the same thing. Okay, so we need to say the same thing. It doesn't matter what your background is. Once you're in the workforce, you have to do the job, you do what it is. But it's like, but how do you communicate that in the language of these young people? You find the person that can translate. You find the professional. So that's step one. You start early. Again, I love it. The world right now is trying to figure out, one, what will school look like in the fall? I'm in Texas. They're trying to figure out how to play football still. In America, they're still trying to figure out how to play football, right? Like football is like, that's what you do. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about this. In football, collegiate sports, I think it's probably common knowledge that like the top quarterbacks, the top athletes, they start getting recruited. They stand out in middle school. They start getting recruited as a freshman in high school. There are freshmen in high school that have already signed to go to like USC, and he's like in the 8th grade. Like, so people, in college, they understand this. You start early. It has to be that same approach with the workforce. You don't just wait till, okay, they're about to graduate in college and you start now. You start early. Internships are important. Internships are important because what it provides is access. It provides exposure. And many times there's a gap. And so these young people haven't been exposed. And so if you want to take them from potential to polish, internships are key, as well as mentorships. And so those are some strategies how to identify and inspire young people to pursue STEM careers. We host an event. We partner with organizations. Some of our current partnerships with Dell, Adobe, Nokia, And we partner with other organizations, right? And we host tech career days. And via these tech career days, now we're doing them virtually. Before we would do field trips and have students come on site so they can understand the various careers that exist. Because just like working at working for the NFL, that like you can have a job in the NFL besides being on the field, and you can have a job in tech besides just being an engineer. But these young people don't know these careers exist. So we have tech career expos and talk about the various ecosystems that exist, the various job opportunities, and then young people can start envisioning themselves in these roles, and they can start using their current education opportunities to prepare. Yeah, and so via our STEM program, we assist with that. We're the bridge for undersourced yet outstanding talent. I'll say that twice again. We are the bridge for undersourced yet outstanding talent. Most people, I would challenge you, think about all the great people I saw. Tell me when my time is up, or 30 seconds. Am I over already? I don't know how long I have.
We'll give you one more statement. There you go.
Okay. I saw Tyler Perry on Good Morning America yesterday. Apparently, Tyler Perry in Atlanta, a hot spot for COVID, he's had his television studio, his movie studio, which he built in his backyard, right? Because he has it like that. He had 360 employees for the last 4 months doing television and movie production. And by the time they were done, there were 0 new cases. My point is he led well. He had a system. And we all know Tyler Perry because he's a half a billionaire. He's ridiculously successful and whatnot. But he came from a very unique background. Basically, he was an undersourced yet outstanding talent. Most people that are profound have this unique background. That's why we need to look to these youth that are coming from these diverse backgrounds and create bridges for them to participate. Thank you.
Great way of kicking us off. Great way of kicking us off. And you made some pretty, several salient points. Is that, the other thing is I'm a huge passionate person with regards to football. And there's a pipeline. There's a process of identifying talent very, very, very young, in elementary school, in middle school. And that's what we've got to do with regards to building that STEM process is we've got to be able to identify and have a continuous process for them to, understand their place in that. And you kind of, change that perception. So let's go next to talk about programs and practices with regards to, training STEM talent, diverse STEM talent. And Liliana, I would love for you to talk about some of those programs and practices and a little bit, take it to the next level. Once people have said, hey, that's something I want to pursue. Can you talk a bit about some of those processes?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I'll talk about 2 of the things that, we've done or that we're going to be doing. And number 1 was that highly technical training that you're focused on one thing. It's kind of a modern day vocational program, which is the Coding Bootcamp. And that's what Savio created or was part of creating back in 2013. Once upon a time, the concept of a coding bootcamp was kind of weird and kind of odd. It started in San Francisco, where one individual said, you know what, I can teach 5 of my friends how to code. He kind of challenged himself to do that. He challenged the other 5 people to learn alongside him. And I think they literally met like at a cafe in San Francisco. And at the end of the 3 months, all of those 4 people who were there were functional developers and they started to get jobs. And so that was a new paradigm, a new system of thinking about how you can take a young adult or you can take an adult, someone who already has a lot of capabilities, and now they just need to learn this specific craft. Coding is a craft, it's a skill set that you learn. Just like we all learned how to do long division and we all learned how to do fractions, it's a specialized methodology. And so coding is the exact same thing. And so I think in terms of putting all of this together, when you talk about diversity, inclusion, I think the most important part is the E, it's the equity, right? So we cannot get caught up with these ideas that software engineering, working at a tech company is something that is superhuman. It is really honestly not compared to the NFL. I'm sorry. We have found people who, were servers and now they're having amazing professional jobs. I don't know any NFL player that has done that. So I think in order for this to really move forward in an equitable fashion is that a lot of people really need to understand that this is a skill. And just like any skill, you need to pick up. And, you know, I know for the Latino community specifically, I will speak about that because I'm Mexicana. A lot of parents in the Latino community really only want their children to be two things. If you're smart and you show talent as a middle schooler or a high schooler, they're telling you, okay, you have to go and be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer, because those are really the only things that they understand will lead to prosperity. And so as you start to increase opportunities for people, it needs to be in an equitable fashion, and everybody needs to understand that programs can be designed and implemented to allow everybody to participate in this this new economy. And so through Sabio, we've done that. The program is very intensive. It can be done on a full-time basis, or it can be done on a part-time basis. So that's where it goes to equity, right? We have a lot of ladies or even dads that are responsible for their children Monday through Friday. And so as they're looking to make that career switch and they're looking to onboard back into the workforce, if we only offered a full-time program, then a lot of people would not be able to participate and it would not be equitable. So our program is either 3 months full-time or it can be 6 months part-time, and you get the exact same curriculum. The delivery sequence is just slowed down. It's not a fire hose, it's more kind of like a garden hose. So those programs and practices you always have to be thinking about, how can I create this in an equitable fashion? And then lastly, it's really about working with additional innovative organizations like National, who can say, hey, if you've gone through a coding boot camp, we're willing to look at that curriculum and then give you additional college credit so that those individuals can continue their academic career. And so I definitely applaud organizations like National for being innovative and for being creative so that they can further support the development of diverse talent. And for diversity, for me, it's just like you said, it's women, it's people from non-traditional backgrounds, it's members of the LGBT community who suffer a lot of discrimination. And then the military community also needs to be considered when you're thinking about diversity in tech.
Well, thank you so much for giving us those insight about those programs and practices. And I think I want to highlight a couple things that you shared. That, there's this perception, and picking up on what Saul Paul said as well, there's this perception that, you have to know exactly where, you have to see that you have a place there, and recognizing there's a place for everybody in taking advantage of that. Secondly, there's so many different on-ramps to get there. Your on-ramp could be as a young person deciding to go there directly, from high school to college, to a coding boot camp, and then expanding their education. But then there's also folks that they may have decided to go into teaching, or they did some other type of profession, or or some other educational path. They still have an on-ramp to this STEM workforce a methodology, and that they can look at it as it's a skill. It is, and I'll tell you, from when I started my software career, and this shows just how old I am. I started coding with punch cards, and then there were PCs, and now there's doing development for online and all of those things. And that those are just new skills that you can learn along the way, and the languages have changed, but you can just add those as you learn other new skills. But then taking those skills and then getting into the corporate workforce. Chris, if you could take it from this step and tell us about some of the expectations around corporations and their requirements for today, and how they're addressing that challenge with regards to demand for this diverse STEM talent.
Sure. And a lot of what we're hearing from the education and training side is that organizations are getting more and more specialized in terms of the skills that they're looking for. So somebody could be graduating out of a university with a software engineering degree, but the company still doesn't necessarily have proof that they know how to do Python or they know how to do Java, a variety of types of skills. So some of the things that are the conversations that are happening nationally are companies going to have to start testing for their applicants coming in for these specific skills in order to validate that they have the competencies needed for these positions. And so there's a lot of work being done on our side of things, being the university side, to unbundle our programming that we have, to isolate specific skills and competencies, and then to test for those so that we can verify that by the time the student walks across the stage at graduation, that they can prove that they have these specific skills to go into those companies. And another thing that companies are doing in order to sort of meet the demand is building up upskilling programs themselves. We have one organization we work with where they have veterans who have come into the organization, and they probably haven't done the best job of identifying the skills that they had in the military and transitioning them into the private sector. So what's happening is that they're coming in and they're underemployed in the organization. And so the turnover on the veteran side is twice as much as it is for the general employee population. So what the organization is doing is they're building up an upskilling pathway so that they can get the folks who are coming into the distribution centers and move them up into project management, move them up into an analyst role, move them up into logistics and other kind of roles there. And many times it's just specific skills. And so the gap isn't that big. But sometimes it is just maybe SQL or Tableau or Python or a few of those skills. And so working to be able to isolate those skills, train to those, so that those veterans in the organization can move up and to fill those positions.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And when you think about some of the ways that they're going about this, I mean, that's the great part about a STEM career, is that it's a building block. Once you identify and you get a skill to get in the door, but it's to use the term that, institutions, great institutions, really include as part of their experience, is it's a lifelong learning experience. You continuously need to build on the educational pathway that you have in order to be presented for additional opportunities. So next we're going to go through and talk about specific practices that are used to connect diverse talent to some of these open STEM opportunities. And I'm going to go back to initially start with Saul Paul with regards to, can you speak about a couple of scenarios where, in your specific very early program that you're doing to inspire and connect these diverse young folks to, say, yep, I want to do this. Can you share a couple of examples of that?
Yes, I can. I alluded to it earlier. We host a Tech Career Expo. What that looks like is bringing tech professionals in the same space as our young people, middle school and high school students. And translating, I alluded to earlier as well, having a translator. Myself, my staff, we speak the language, and so we translate. This was allowed us to impact tens of thousands of students in this specific space. And the way that we do it, the reason why we do it. So for example, a practical example, in Silicon Valley at Dell, we had some students from Oakland, right outside the Bay. They came and they got to get a tour of the facilities and whatnot. We had a coding camp there that day after lunch, but before lunch, we had an entertaining and inspirational moment. But we brought in C-level execs as well as different VPs and engineers as well, and leaders at Dell, and we hosted a panel. And we talked about, like, what does it look like? What was their path to get there? What was their background? So then they could start to see it. And then they were all people of color. All of our students were students of color. Michael Antic in the chat said, what was the Tech Career Expo called? It's called Saul Paul's Tech Career Expo. If you hang around me long enough, you'll notice I went the Tyler Perry route. Any and everything I do is branded Saul Paul. So just Google Saul Paul Tech Career Expo, you can see it, or any and everything Saul Paul. But
okay. All right, that's great. Yeah, I mean, that whole identification is very, very important, and it also helps.
Can anybody hear me or see me?
Yes, we can now. We can now. Yeah.
Mic check.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Oh, let me see if I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I would just like to highlight that this is what we teach our students. I was talking to you on my iPhone, it died. I turned 45 degrees to the left where I had my backup MacBook Pro, so we keep it moving. These are like the type of skills that we tell our students. These are things they have to deal with consistently. But this is what makes them better at what they do. So I was making the point about a practical opportunity, our South Paul Tech Career Expo. We bring those, and then because of that, all of a sudden, and we teach them how to network as well. That's something that's overlooked often. So we teach them how to network. Some of our students left with coding. We partner with ID Tech. They do coding boot camps and workshops. They scholarship our students to where they got to get like high-end coding and high-quality training. And Dell actually gave internship opportunities specifically to our students. And it was just that exposure. So that's a practical example. I'd also just like to highlight briefly, in general, not specifically, but overall, for our employers that are online, you want to build and attract. You want to build and attract, right? You want to look beyond the traditional talent pool. You want to partner to ensure workforce preparedness. You want to develop and retain talent. That's why you have ERGs, right? Employee resource groups. Because you also, not only do you want to attract this talent to your company, you want to be able to keep them. And so to be able to keep them, you have to create a safe and inclusive space as well. So you want to support employee connections. That's a practical way to connect diverse talent to STEM opportunities so that they stay once they're there. Yeah, and I'll stop there.
All right, well, thank you. I have, I guess, one follow-up to that. So do you provide a way for these employers to do that virtually today? I mean, you've got a lot of students that are under-engaged because of the whole COVID-19 lockdown. I mean, I think that that may be a very engaging and inspiring opportunity for many employers to do this type of, digital experience and career opportunities. Is that something that you've been able to help employers with?
Thank you very much. In September, the third week of September, we're hosting our first two-day Tech Career Expo, and it will be all virtual. As we've had to pivot, it's only helped us because we've been very geographic, very location-based, and now we get to open it up nationally. And so if anybody would like more information about that or to participate, we literally have opportunities because there's more space and it's open, right? Like myself, I don't understand, and I love it also, I don't understand 80% of the stuff that the people we partner with do, but I don't have to. I'm not the one that'll do it. It's like we just create the opportunity. We have the talent pool and we translate. And so we want to build that bridge. So if someone is here and you work with blank, fill in the blank, and you want to expose that to young students, we would love to create an opportunity and facilitate that.
All right, well, thanks so much. So next we're going to transition and talk about the topic that was introduced about not just, bringing the net new, but it's also being able to upgrade their skills. As we talked about lifelong learning, technology continues to innovate. Liliana, could you start the conversation about what can an existing employed person do to upgrade their skills so they can pursue STEM opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, the world of STEM, as it relates to picking up these new skills, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because if you go and you start Googling, you're going to find so many amazing resources, which is part of it, right? It's fantastic. Unfortunately, as you start learning lots of great concepts, what you need to look out for is you have to think about it in the reverse. You have to say, okay, I found this position at Google that I love. It's describing these 4 key capabilities that I need to have, and then try as hard as you can to focus on those top 4 to 5 skill sets that the job description is calling for. Because the fact is that there's just too much information out there as it relates to software engineering. I think there was a blog post once and it talked about how you literally can write 65 different functions that would refresh a page. And so the question is, oh my gosh, do I need to learn those 65 ways? Or do I just need to know the 2 or 3 most popular and efficient ways and then move on to learning something new? So there is a plethora of information out there. That is a fantastic, fantastic opportunity. And this will once again allow you to confirm for yourself that you can begin to pick up these skills. You can learn these concepts. So I think all of that is really positive. You can definitely start at places like Codecademy. We've been recommending Codecademy for the past 7 years. They have different paths. So if you're interested in engineering, they have all the great languages where you learn kind of like the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. And then they also have some stuff kind of like in the creative end. If you see yourself more as a designer, they also have that path as well. So there's tons of information, whether it be on Coursera, Codecademy, and or maybe you just start on YouTube where you start hearing the information. Maybe you aren't necessarily ready, or maybe you don't have the equipment. You don't have a machine that allows you to kind of download the beefy software, because software engineering does require that you have a little more modern machine. It doesn't have to be a MacBook Pro that's going to cost you $3,000, but it may be a personal computer that can cost you about $1,000. So if you aren't at a place where you are perfectly situated from a hardware side, you can still begin to expose yourself to these concepts of coding with basic HTML, basic CSS, and then you want to move on to JavaScript. And that allows you to then start understanding the world of logic and how a server thinks about the instructions that you're giving it, because computers are really dumb and they'll only do what you tell them to do.
Right. And even if it's wrong bit, they'll do exactly what you tell them to do. Exactly.
And that can be a problem. So you definitely want to just kind of pivot in that direction, start getting some free resources. And then if you say, okay, a lot of people describe getting a bug, right? Like when you're like, wow, I can create something, I can make something happen. If you get that bug, then you want to go and look for a program, whether it be, a certificate program at a university, a coding boot camp, or something that's blended, so that you can then take the next step to focus and gain the exact skills so that you can launch your career in tech.
So thank you so much for that. And especially given right now in this time of COVID-19, where you've got so many people that are in industries that for right now, it's going to be pretty hard sledding for, it's not going to be like it was pre-March. And so they're looking at what things can they do. And so basically, as I say, taking what you're sharing, is that, they should seriously consider STEM careers as an opportunity, even if that was not their career before, if they were in hospitality or retail or something of that sort. And there's a way that they could start by taking little bites, by starting with some of the free YouTube content and then going to the Codecademy and then getting the bug and then being ready to go through a coding program such that that really puts them on to the freeway, if you will, to going into that tech career. So thanks so much for sharing that. So next, I want to go back to, you've gone through a program, you got you've got the bug as Liliana shared it, or as Saul Paul mentioned, that you saw, you're inspired to pursue a career in tech. Now you're ready to go through and see what are the employers doing to increase their STEM skills within their existing workforce. Chris, can you share a bit about that?
Sure, and actually the first part of it ties into Liliana's answer when talking about what existing employees can do. And a lot of it is around taking advantage of the existing resources. And one of them is tuition assistance and employer supportive education. So currently about over 2/3 of companies offer some kind of tuition assistance, and a lot of that can involve training and development for their employees. And currently only 5% of employees actually take companies up on that offer. And some of this is around awareness. But so one of the first things we tell either our students or current employees is taking a look at the current resources that you do have, and tuition assistance is one of them. So from the company side of things, what they can do, and usually $5,250, that's $5,250, is that magic number that companies can use to reimburse their employees so that they don't recognize that as income. That's the limit. The $5,250 can go a long way towards paying for a coding camp, paying for academic courses that contain those skills. So they're actively investing in those programs. And what they're also doing is starting to broaden it. They're starting to broaden what was once a traditional educational degree tuition reassistance program to be more specific around training and development towards those specific skills. And so you see more and more companies starting to do that. Many companies are starting to bring in maybe third-party vendors like a linked learning and items like that for the training programs, but others are partnering with the universities, with organizations like mine, Liliana's, to help to upskill their employees and their organizations. And one of the things that I've been thinking about during this conversation about the STEM fields and careers is that there's a lot of positions that aren't traditionally STEM that are starting to incorporate more of the technologies. And one of the things we've seen in the last 4 weeks that's just been a tsunami is online teaching and training teachers to take their classes that are face-to-face now virtual. Teaching teachers how to edit videos, how to do graphics, how to build a rich multimedia environment inside their learning portals. And in the last 3 weeks, we know LA Unified is going to be starting online. San Diego Unified is starting online. Houston's going to be starting online. And now teachers have the opportunity now in districts who are now sending teachers to our programming. And so what we've done is we've unbundled our digital literacy training program for teachers into short form modules. We have 10 of them. So teachers can go and take each of those individual modules, or they can take all 10 and stack that in towards 2 courses towards their master's degree. But really the whole idea is to get the teachers trained up with these technology skills so that they can stand up these online courses by the time September comes around.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, I guess the takeaways I have from this, and I guess I have another clarification or another question, is that, that employers are not only, making the suggestion and encouraging their employees to do this, they're also financially providing resources to that, and which is great for the existing employees. But I would be remiss if we didn't talk about, we're inspiring all these people from this particular conversation about how to upgrade their skills. There's some new creative ways for people to actually pay for getting these new skills. So Paul, I think you mentioned a little bit about, scholarship opportunities. And then Liliana, I know you have like a variety of different opportunities for people to pay to get for people to leverage to get these new skills without hardship. So if you guys could take a moment, each of you, we'll start with you, Saul Paul, and then Liliana, talk about some of the different options that are available to have people not use this as an excuse not to pursue this wonderful opportunity.
If I might have a slide in the deck that accompanies this. Does this also connect with the actions we can take?
That's we'll get to that in about 10 minutes.
Okay, so then how about you go first, Liliana? I want to make sure that I'm clear when I ask the question.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, from day one, Sabio launched with an innovative training program and then also innovative financing solutions to go right alongside it. And so we've maintained that. With Sabio, you can defer tuition so that you don't start making payments until you land that first post-Sabio job. You can do an income share agreement that is a percentage of your income. You could work with providers like Sallie Mae. We're one of the few coding boot camps in the country that actually has a relationship with Sallie Mae. You can also work with Skills Fund. They're a very large company throughout the United States that helps coding boot camps. And then you can also go, you have strong credit and you want to go to NerdWallet and find a 0% credit card, you can do that, right? Like their offers, we're actually living in really good times because credit card rates are ridiculously low. So there's lots of different opportunities for people to, if they are dedicated and they know that they're going to make this happen, to craft a financial solution that will fuel that drive and that passion. So that's how we approach it, having tons of options for people.
And Saul Paul, just to clarify, you mentioned a bit about that there's scholarship opportunities with some of the people, some of the corporations you partner with. Can you give a little bit of insight into what does that consist of?
Perfect. Yes, our program for all of our students are free. It's a nonprofit. My business is as a speaker, as a musician, as a multimedia producer. That's what led to this opportunity is I would go give keynotes and work with these amazing organizations. They sought out ways to continue our relationship and they saw the work that we did with youth in the community. And so working with their CSR, like the ERGs and whatnot, This was actually created to meet that need. And so we've always made it free to our students. There's a cost associated, but the corporations, our businesses, our partners, they invest into that so that we remove that obstacle and provide a 9-month program that mirrors the entire school year with the mentorship and the internships, and that is the scholarship. So we curate our students. Once a student becomes part of the program, then we continually walk with them. They have continual access. And does that answer your question?
That answers my question. So we're going to wrap this up with one last question, and then we're going to go to some takeaways and then give people an opportunity to see. We've got a couple questions, so we're going to be able to do those. So we're going to go back to development and retention. All of you guys have done what you did what you needed to do. You got people in the door. They're working at these jobs. Would like to go through and just give an opportunity to we've got to call this the lightning round. If you had one statement, what can corporations do to not only, they got them in the door, what can they do to further develop or retain them? So if you can come back with a statement, once they got them in the door, because I think that this is always missing. Just as much as it's hard to get them in the door, it's hard to retain them. What can corporations do to retain this diverse STEM talent? Start with you, Chris.
Develop and retain, basically empower to engage, support employee connections, and strengthen through employee leadership, connection, and growth. The ERGs, I mean, that's what the real purpose and point of the employee resource groups are, right? People want to feel welcome. And so even if you went out the way and you've got some unique person to be a part of what you do, then you have to figure out how to make them feel comfortable, warm, and welcome. So.
All right, well, very good. Well, I'll go this way. Liliana, what can corporations do to help with retention of diverse STEM talent?
Yeah, I think companies have to be flexible, and this new COVID reality has taught us that you can be flexible in how you work with your employees. There are so many companies in Silicon Valley who were adamant that their employees had to be on campus close to 10 hours a day. And now, boom, those campuses are open and the companies are doing just as well. So companies have to be flexible when they're looking to have diverse workforces.
All right, and then Chris, you get to bat cleanup on this section of our session. What can corporations do to retain diverse STEM talent?
I think developing a culture of ongoing development and learning. Don't forget that your most important asset already works for you. And so keeping and fostering those, their ongoing development and their pathways, and making them see that there's opportunities for them within the organization, because that's many times people leave because they don't see that pathway. Mm-hmm. So showing them the pathway and then helping them to get the skills in order to make it there.
All right. Well, very good. Well, thanks so much. Our next section is we're going to go and talk about some key actions and takeaways that you can take from this session, and we'll start that with Saul Paul. What key actions would you recommend our audience take in order to address the issues that we've been talking about?
Well, I'll highlight 3 ways that they can be involved with the work that we're doing. We're doing the work, we're doing it across the country. Sponsor a student, volunteer to mentor, or pick a month for your company to participate in our virtual monthly STEM career days. This connects back to the first point I mentioned on the first slide, and it's not with us, it's like partner with the professional. In all essence, there are many people across the country doing the work, some more effectively than others. Vet it, find a professional, partner with them to start to nurture that pipeline and expose these young people at an early age.
All right, and that thanks so much, Saul Paul from Be the Change Network. And then next, we're going to talk about, from Liliana, what key actions would you recommend our audience take in order to address the issues that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so we also have a couple of really amazing and free classes that can get anybody started that's interested in coding. So if you're a manager and you want to upskill some of your workforce, you can point them at our free URL, which is lms.savio.la. The awesome thing about our free classes is that they actually come with support, because if you spend the whole day chasing a comma down, then you can get a little discouraged. So twice a week, our free classes come with support. So please feel free to share that with your employees if you're looking to have them gain digital skills. Also, once again, if you are going to initiate programs or start to be serious about increasing the number of women who are part of your program, you really want to think about having flexible schedules so that people can work with their day and night time. We have that. We offer part-time programs and full-time programs to accommodate different requirements from people. And then also, if you are looking to hire more non-traditional candidates, especially women, you really need to go ahead and just Google, top phrases to remove from a job description. If you're sitting there and you're saying, I need a rock star, blah, a lot of women don't identify with that language. And it says something about the type of company you're building. And a lot of women are just going to be like, boom, next, on to the next one, right? So if you want to attract exceptional, diverse technical professionals, you yourself also have to be a professional organization and not just be like, hey, we have a ping pong table. And it's like, am I going to work or am I going just play around all day? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? So those are some very key takeaways that you can do to start increasing diversity and technical talent within your workforce.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Liliana. And then Chris, you get to back clean up again. What are some of the key actions that you're going to recommend our audience do to address the topics we were talking about?
Sure. So for the individuals that are looking for either a new job or employees looking to upskill, there's a lot of resources and training out there that are either free or very low cost. And in the chat box, I'll put in a link to the workforce.org site there, but there you can see what are the priority sectors right now for jobs people are hiring for. And then the breaking down of the skills that are in there so that it's very clear sort of what is the roadmap to get to those particular jobs and organizations. And then aligning with education and training agencies, whether it's national, whether it's Sabio, or whether it's others out there, that you can help identify and isolate those specific skills that'll help you move up into those in-demand jobs.
All right.
And, yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. And we've got time for one last question before we're wrapping up. Make certain that everybody gets a chance to exit out of here on time. And so we'll take this question and open it up. Let's see. We've got, thanks for the response. I agree with the funding issue. This is a question with regards to, this is was specifically with regards to Saul Paul about support currently on missions for local and national entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Actually, since you're in the chat, I found that someone asked a question, and then they asked about problems that Latinx or Black entrepreneurs might have. Okay. I mentioned funding, and then they responded, but what else? I find it interesting. I'm like, they basically need founders first. Like, if you notice the question, that's the answer. Founders first. Founders first is the answer.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, let's take this opportunity for in this last question and answer section to go through and give one last comment that you're going to leave your audience with. And I also want to let the audience know, as part of this session, we are going to send you a copy of this deck, a recorded copy of this session, as well as some of the resources that were mentioned on the call. Like, for example, Saul Paul mentioned about his upcoming September event. We're going to ask him to send us that link so we can make certain that goes out with the materials. Liliana, you mentioned a couple of free things that you want people to do beforehand. Please send that to us today so we can get that out. We'll send this out to people by Friday. And Chris, you mentioned a couple things with regards to the Workforce Solutions group that of National University Systems that can send that out. But we'll go and ask one last statement before we wrap this up. Saul Paul, we'll start with you.
I'll keep it simple. Cultivate inclusion. Look down the road, the next decade, what do you want it to look like, and start now.
So preparing for 2030. Liliana, how about you? One last statement.
Just always have the thought of building equitable systems.
All right, very good. And Chris?
For the individuals, I would say utilize the resources around you that are available. Myself, Liliana, Saul Paul, I think all of us are here to sort of answer any kind of questions or steer you towards any sort of resources that might help you.
All right. Well, thank you. We have had such a phenomenal panel. I want to remind you, there is a quick poll that we would like you to take. So please, please, please take a few moments to fill out this poll. You'll see an example of it listed here with regards to information that was shared on the session here. So if you can please take a few moments to complete this poll, we would truly appreciate that. And while you're taking, it'll take you less than a minute to complete that poll. So please, please, please take care of that. And while we do that, I want to share with you some upcoming things. Next month, we will be back with a new suite of webinars. Our webinar for August, we've got our two public webinars. The first is our Fast Path Fireside Chat with a special speaker, Mike Cunningham, PhD, who was the founder of Cunningham Graphics, and he's going to specifically talk about 3 topics. 1, how to achieve significant growth through acquisition. The second is going to be about how to expand your international business. And the third, how to partner with certified minority businesses in order to grow your revenues with top companies. So that is our fireside chat that's happening on August the 16th at 6 p.m. And then the second one is going to be the power of picking the right investor. And that will be our COVID-19 webinar. And that will be happening on August the 27th at 10 a.m. And we've got 3 great speakers for that as well. We're going to have William Lee, who is the CEO of Knightscope, which is an autonomous security vehicle. He just closed a $30 million crowdfunding. We were going to have Derek Ashong and Lucia Brawley, who are the co-founders of Ampit, who just closed their Series A investment. And then we'll also have Valerie King Bailey, who is the co-founder of Onshore Technology, and she'll be closing her round of funding. So they're going to talk about specifically the different types of funding options, how they got there, what they had to do. You're going to hear the up close secret stories about what they went through. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining us for today. Thank again our speakers, Chris Graham of National University System, Liliana Monge of Sabio, and then Saul Paul of the Be the Change Network. Thank you everyone for joining us, and please, please, please stay tuned and sign up for our next webinar, and look out for the follow-up handout that'll be coming your way at the end of the day tomorrow. Again, thanks, and have a great, safe, and blessed day. All right, we got through it. Woohoo!
That was great. Excellent.
Are we live still?
I think we are.
Could you turn off the recording?